Hello guys, welcome to Phonic What If. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto found love with Nico Robin, bonding over their shared pasts as hunted survivors. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Worlds Apart. Hearts aligned. The dimensional tear shimmered like heat above desert sand, barely visible against the azure sky. Naruto Uzumaki crouched on a high branch, his white Hokage CL oak billowing in the breeze as he studied the anomaly that had appeared just outside Konoha's borders. 3 Anbu operatives waited silently behind him, masks gleaming in the dappled forest light. Same as the others? Naruto asked, not turning around. Yes, Lord 7th, replied the operative with a bear mask. This is the 4th one this month. They're appearing with increasing frequency. Naruto narrowed his eyes. At 30, the whisker marks on his cheeks had become more pronounced, framing a face that had grown leaner and more weathered with responsibility. His spiky blonde hair was slightly longer now, reminiscent of his father's. The research division can't explain them, he muttered, more to himself than to his squad. And they're growing larger. He stood. Decision made. I'll examine this one personally. The chakra signature feels different. Lord 7th, with respect, the Anbu captain began. I know, Naruto grinned, a flash of his younger self breaking through. Shikamaru will lecture me about proper Hokage protocol. Again. But if these tears are a threat to the village, I need to understand them firsthand. He formed a shadow clone with practiced ease, not even needing hand signs anymore. My clone will return to handle the diplomatic meeting with the Land of Rivers. Tell Shikamaru I'll be back before sunset. The Anbu nodded reluctantly. Years of RVing under Naruto had taught them that arguing with the Hokage's protective instincts was futile. Approaching the shimmering distortion, Naruto extended his senses. The tear radiated an energy unlike anything he'd encountered. Not quite chakra, not quite natural energy. Something else entirely. He reached out with a tendril of his own chakra, golden and warm, hoping to analyze the phenomenon without disturbing it. The moment his energy touched the tear, it pulsed violently. The distortion expanded, widening from a shimmer to a yawning portal that crackled with electricity. Naruto felt himself being pulled forward. An irresistible force unlike any jutsu he'd experienced. Lord Hokage. The Anbu rushed forward, but they were too late. Stay back, Naruto commanded, already sliding toward the portal. Tell Shikamaru to seal this area until I return. The portal swallowed him in a flash of blinding light. His last glimpse was of the Anbu's outstretched hands as the world twisted, folded, and compressed around him. He was falling through nothingness and everything simultaneously. A kaleidoscope of realities flickering past like pages in a book flipped too quickly. Naruto tried to center himself, to gather chakra. But the usual warm flow felt scattered and wild. Kurama stirred within him, the Nine Tails consciousness reaching through their bond. This is beyond even my experience, Naruto. The fox's voice rumbled in his mind. We're crossing boundaries no shinobi was meant to cross. Any suggestions? Naruto grimaced, tumbling through the void. Survive, Kurama responded dryly. And prepare for impact. The void abruptly ripped open, and sunlight flooded Naruto's vision. He was suddenly falling through open air, plummeting toward an expanse of blue ocean dotted with islands. Wind whipped past him as gravity reasserted its dominance. Instincts took over. Naruto summoned Kurama's chakra, golden energy enveloping him as he used it to slow his descent. Even so, he hit the water with enough force to send up a geyser visible for miles. The impact would have killed an ordinary person, but Naruto merely sank deep into the ocean before propelling himself back to the surface. Breaking through the waves, he gasped for air and took stock of his surroundings. Nothing looked familiar. The sky was the same blue, but the clouds moved differently. The air tasted of salt and possibility, charged with unfamiliar energy. About half a mile away, a small island rose from the sea, lush with tropical vegetation. Where the hell are we, Kurama? Not our world, the fox replied. His usually confident voice tinged with uncertainty. The natural energy here feels unusual. Different laws may govern this reality. Naruto channeled chakra to his feet and gone walking across the water toward the island. His senses, honed from decades as a shinobi, detected no immediate threats, but a prickling unease crept up his spine. "We need information," he muttered. And then away back home. As he approached the shoreline, a gleaming white ship rounded the far side of the island. Even from a distance, Naruto recognized the design as military, disciplined rows of sailors visible on deck and a flag fluttering from the mast. Not a symbol he recognized. The ship altered course, heading directly toward him. Naruto paused, considering. Diplomacy had been his first approach for years now. But he was in unknown territory without backup. The diplomatic option still seemed best, but caution would be necessary. He continued to the beach, letting his chakra cloak fade. The sand was black volcanic grit that crunched beneath his sandals. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, their fronds casting shifting shadows. The climate reminded him of missions to the land of waves. But something felt fundamentally different about this place, like the very atoms vibrated at an unfamiliar frequency. The white ship dropped anchor in the deeper water offshore. A smaller craft separated from its side, carrying what appeared to be soldiers in white and blue uniforms. They rowed with military precision toward the beach where Naruto stood waiting, his Hokage cloak now folded and stored in a pocket seal. No need to advertise his status in an unknown world. "They're approaching with weapons ready, **, Kurama observed. Diplomacy might not be their first choice. "Let's see," Naruto replied quietly. He raised his hands in a universal gesture of peace as the boat scraped against the sand. 8 uniformed men jumped out, rifles raised and pointed directly at him. Each W, or a cap with the word, Marine, across the front. A 9th man, clearly an officer judging by his more elaborate uniform and the coat draped over his shoulders, stepped forward. "Identify yourself and state your business in world government territory," the officer demanded. His hand rested on a sword at his hip, and his eyes narrowed suspiciously at Naruto's orange and black attire. Naruto maintained his non-threatening posture. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm a traveler who's lost. I mean no harm." The officer's expression didn't change. "Witnesses on our ship observed you walking on water and falling from the sky. Those are the abilities of a devil fruit user. Are you a pirate?" Devil fruit, pirate. The terms meant nothing to Naruto, but he recognized the accusatory tone. "I'm not familiar with those terms," Naruto replied honestly. "I'm from very far away. Perhaps we could discuss this civilly. I'm simply trying to find my way home." The officer barked a laugh. "Playing dumb won't help you. This area is under strict marine jurisdiction due to recent pirate activity. You'll be detained and questioned." He nodded to his men. "Cuff him. Use sea prism stone." 2 Marines approached cautiously, holding strange bluish manacles. Something about them made Kurama stir uncomfortably. "I don't like the energy from those restraints, **, the fox warned. "Something about them feels suppressive." Naruto took a step back. "I'd prefer to cooperate without restraints. I've done nothing wrong." "That's not your decision to make," the officer snapped. "Restrain him now." The Marines lunged forward. Naruto sidestepped with fluid ease, his body responding with the instinct of decades of combat experience. Without using jutsu or chakra enhancement, he simply moved faster than they anticipated, causing the 2 Marines to collide with each other. The officer's hand dropped to his sword. "So that's how it's going to be." He drew his blade in a single smooth motion. "Men, subdue the suspect with force." The Marines opened fire. Bullets whistled through the air toward Naruto, who vanished in a flash of speed that left only a swirl of sand. He reappeared behind the group, still maintaining a defensive posture. "I don't want to fight," Naruto stated firmly. "But I won't be taken prisoner without cause." "Impossible," one of the Marines whispered. He moved faster than Soru. The officer turned, his expression hardening. "Specialized devil fruit abilities. Likely a Logia or Paramesha type. Switch to sea prism bullets." The Marines began reloading with different ammunition from pouches at their belts. Naruto frowned, realizing that peaceful resolution was becoming less likely. He formed a single shadow clone that appeared beside him in a puff of smoke. The Marine stumbled back in shock. He can duplicate himself without a mirror fruit. The officer recovered faster. "All devil fruit users have weaknesses. Find his. He charged forward, sword gleaming in the sun. Naruto's clone engaged the officer while Naruto himself weaved between the bullets now being fired. These new projectiles gave off a strange energy that made his skin prickle. One grazed his arm, and he felt a momentary weakness, as if his chakra had been briefly disrupted. Those bullets suppress power. Kurama growled. Don't let them hit you directly. Naruto nodded, adjusting his strategy. He needed to end this quickly without seriously harming these men who were simply doing their job, however misguided. He formed a Rasengan, the spiraling sphere of chakra condensing in his palm without fanfare. The Marine's eyes widened at the glowing orb. What kind of devil fruit is that? It's not a fruit, Naruto replied, driving the Rasengan into the sand between them. The old explosion sent a shockwave across the beach, tossing the Marines backward without injuring them seriously. Sand rained down as Naruto leapt into the air, planning to escape into the island's interior. A flurry of arms suddenly sprouted from his body, wrapping around his limbs and holding him in midair. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise as he found himself immobilized by dozens of disembodied female arms that had bloomed from his own skin. That's quite enough, came a cool, feminine voice from the tree line. Marines on one side, a strange man with inexplicable powers on the other. This island grows more interesting by the minute. Naruto twisted his head to see a tall woman stepping from the shadow of the palm trees. She wore a long purple coat over a form-fitting black outfit, with raven hair framing a face that managed to be both beautiful and intimidating. Her arms were crossed over her chest in an unusual position, and her blue eyes studied him with calculating intelligence. The Marine officer spat blood from where the clone had landed a defensive strike. Nico Robin, the devil child herself. Men, forget the unknown suspect, priority target identified. The woman, Nico Robin, smiled slightly, though the expression didn't reach her eyes. How flattering to be remembered, Captain. But I'm afraid I can't let you arrest either of us today. The arms holding Naruto suddenly released, disappearing in swirls of flower petals. More arms sprouted from the Marines' bodies, bending them backward and disarming them with disturbing efficiency. Run, she said to Naruto, her gaze never leaving the struggling Marines. Unless you prefer their hospitality to mine. Naruto hesitated only a moment before nodding. This woman had intervened without knowing his intentions. Either he was an enemy of these Marines, or she recognized something in his situation. Either way, she was currently the better option. He dashed toward her, and together they plunged into the dense jungle of the island's interior. Behind them, shouts and gunfire rang out as the Marines recovered from Robin's attack. They ran in silence for several minutes, the woman leading with confident familiarity through the twisted undergrowth. Eventually, they reached a small clearing where a canvas tent had been erected beside the ruins of what appeared to be an ancient stone structure. Robin finally stopped, turning to face Naruto with arms crossed and expression guarded. Now then, she said, her voice controlled and cool, perhaps you'd care to explain how a man falls from the sky, walks on water, creates duplicates of himself, and generates spiraling energy weapons, all without a devil fruit. Naruto matched her direct gaze. I could ask how you made arms sprout from my body. That's not a technique I've encountered before. A faint smile touched her lips. An exchange of information, then. Fair enough. She uncrossed her arms in a gesture that somehow felt like the lowering of a weapon. I ate the Hana no Mi, the flower fruit. It allows me to sprout replicas of my body parts from any surface within my range. Your turn. Naruto considered his response carefully. If he truly was in another world, full disclosure might be necessary to find allies and a way home. I'm from a different world, he said bluntly, watching for her reaction. A place where we use chakra, life energy, to perform techniques like the ones you saw. I'm what we call a shinobi, or ninja. Robin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, not disbelief, but intense interest. Another world, she repeated. That would explain why you don't know about devil fruits or the Marines. She studied him with renewed attention. In my experience, the most outlandish explanations are often true. The Grand Line has taught me that reality is far stranger than fiction. She gestured to the stone ruins beside her camp. I'm an archaeologist studying these ancient structures. They contain refer NCES to other worlds and dimensions beyond our own. Her gaze sharpened. Your arrival may not be coincidental. The sound of crashing vegetation interrupted them, Marines moving through the jungle in their direction. We should continue this conversation elsewhere, Robin said, quickly gathering essential items from her camp into a backpack. The Marines on this island have been unusually persistent lately. Something about this place has them agitated. Naruto nodded, forming a shadow clone without hand signs. My clone will lead them away. Where do you suggest we go? Robin paused, momentarily, fascinated by the creation of his duplicate. I have a small boat hidden on the north shore. We can reach the next island by nightfall. She slung her pack over her shoulder and pointed through the trees. This way. As they moved through the jungle, Robin maintained a measured pace that spoke of someone accustomed to both flight and pursuit. The distant shouts of Marines followed the false cry. Naruto's clone had created in the opposite direction. You seem remarkably calm about meeting someone from another world, Naruto observed as they navigated a particularly dense section of undergrowth. Robin glanced back at him. Her expression unreadable. I've spent my life searching for hidden truths in ancient texts. Many of them speak of other worlds and dimensions beyond our own. The scholars of Ohara. She stopped abruptly. A flash of old pain crossing her features before she controlled it. Let's just say I've always believed there was more to existence than what we can immediately perceive. Something about her momentary vulnerability resonated with Naruto. He recognized the look of someone who had learned to hide their wounds beneath a carefully constructed facade. They reached a small cove where a sleek boat was concealed beneath camouflage netting and branches. Robin efficiently uncovered it and began preparing to launch. You're trusting me rather quickly, Naruto noted, helping her push the boat toward the water. For all you know, I could be dangerous. Robin's smile was knowing and slightly sad. I've survived this long by being an excellent judge of character. Besides, she added as they climbed aboard, if you intended me harm, those shadow duplicates of yours would offer plenty of opportunities for ambush. As they pushed away from shore, the sound of marine whistles echoed across the beach. Robin calmly unfurled the sail while Naruto created 4 shadow clones to row, accelerating their departure. They're persistent, Robin murmured, watching the white uniforms emerging from the tree line. More so than usual for a routine patrol. A crack echoed across the water as a rifle fired. The bullet splashed harmlessly several feet from their boat. Allow me, Naruto said, forming a familiar cross sign. A dozen shadow clones appeared on the water's surface between them and the shore. Each began forming a Rasengan. Robin's eyes widened slightly. Fascinating technique. The clones slammed their spiraling chakra spheres into the ocean simultaneously. The resulting geyser created a massive wall of water that temporarily obscured them from the Marines' view. By the time it settled, they were well beyond accurate rifle range. Robin studied him with renewed interest as his clones dispelled themselves. That level of power without a devil fruit, your world must be quite extraordinary. It has its moments, Naruto replied with a hint of his old grin. Though I'm beginning to think yours might match it for strangeness. As they sailed further from the island, Naruto felt the constant alertness of decades as a shinobi ease slightly. Something about Robin's composed demeanor suggested she was as formidable in her way as any ninja he had known. So, he began, settling across from her in the small boat, tell me about these Marines and why they're so eager to capture you. Robin's expression cooled. The Marines are the military arm of the world government, which rules most of this world's oceans. As for their interest in me, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I can read the ancient language written on structures called pongli. PHS, stone cubes that contain the true history of our world. The world government has forbidden this knowledge and executed anyone who seeks it. They're hunting you for being able to read. Naruto's brow furrowed in disbelief. They've been hunting me since I was 8 years old, Robin replied matter-of-factly. The world government destroyed my home island of Ohara and everyone on it to prevent the spread of forbidden knowledge. I was the only survivor. The casual way she stated this shocked Naruto more than the content itself. To package such trauma in such neutral language spoke of years of compartmentalization. You've been on the run since you were a child, he said quietly. Not a question, but a recognition. Something in his tone made Robin look at him more closely. Yes, she acknowledged. Until recently, when I found a crew that actually welcomed me. The Straw Hat Pirates. A genuine warmth entered her voice for the first time. My captain is unusual. He's currently involved in business elsewhere. Which is why I'm conducting this research alone. Naruto nodded slowly. I understand more than you might think. In my world, I grew up as the container for a powerful anti-tie that had nearly destroyed our village. The adults feared and hated me, though I didn't understand why until much later. I was alone until I found people who saw me as more than just a vessel for a monster. Robin's careful composure slipped for just a moment, revealing surprise and a flash of recognition before her neutral expression returned. It seems our worlds may have more in common than just dimensional proximity. She observed. Persecution for things beyond one's control appears to be a universal constant. They sailed in companionable silence for a while, each processing the unexpected parallels in their histories. The sea stretched endlessly around them, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the waves. These ruins you're studying, Naruto finally said, you meant one they contain references to other worlds. Could they help me find a way back to mine? Robin tilted her head thoughtfully. Possibly. The ruins on that island were just one site in a network I've been investigating. They all contain similar imagery, doors between worlds, beings that travel between dimensions. Until today, I considered them metaphorical. She gave him an appraising look. Your arrival changes that assessment. She reached into her pack and withdrew a leather-bound journal. Opening it, she showed Naruto sketches of stone carvings, circular portals with figures passing through them. Star charts unlike any constellation pattern he recognized, and strange symbols that reminded him vaguely of Fuinjutsu seals. This symbol keeps appearing, Robin said, pointing to a particular marking that resembled an eye inside a spiral. In the ancient language, it translates roughly to the watching vortex, or the eye of worlds. Does it look familiar? Naruto studied it carefully. Not exactly, but the spiral pattern has significance in my world too. The Uzumaki clan, my mother's people, were known for spiral symbols and advanced sealing techniques that could manipulate space and time. Robin's eyes lit with scholarly excitement. Then there may indeed be a connection. My next destination is an island called Altares. According to my research, it contains the largest concentration of these dimensional references, including what might be instructions for crossing between worlds. Instructions that someone might have used to create the rift that brought me here, Naruto mused. Or perhaps it formed naturally. Either way, Altares sounds like my best lead. The sun began to set, painting the horizon in brilliant oranges and purples. Robin expertly adjusted their heading using the stars that were beginning to appear. We should reach the port town of Tristram by morning, she said. It's a neutral trading hub, not directly under world government control. We can resupply there and plan our journey to Altares. She glanced at him. You'll attract attention with those abilities of yours. This world has powerful people, but they generally fall into categories: devil fruit users, hockey wielders, scientific enhancements. You don't fit any of them. I can be discreet, Naruto assured her. Years as Hokage had taught him diplomacy and restraint, a far cry from the impulsive youth he'd once been. Though I should warn you, trouble tends to find me regardless. Robin's smile held genuine amusement. In that case, you'll fit right in with the company I keep. Her expression grew more serious. However, there's something unusual about the Marines' behavior lately. Their patrols have increased dramatically in areas with ancient ruins, and they seem to have specific knowledge they shouldn't possess. You think someone's feeding them information? Naruto asked. Perhaps. Robin frowned slightly. Or perhaps they've found their own scholar who can read the ancient texts. Either way, it complicates our research. As night fell completely, Robin produced a small lantern that cast a warm glow over the boat. They took turns sleeping and keeping watch, an arrangement Hat came naturally to both of them, people accustomed to living with one eye open. During his watch, Naruto meditated, attempting to sense the natural energy of this new world. It felt different, wilder, less structured than the natural chakra of his own dimension. Kurama stirred within him, equally curious about their surroundings. This world has its own power system, The fox observed. I see. And feel it flowing through the ocean itself. It's not chakra as we know it, but it's equally potent in its way. Robin mentioned something called haki, Naruto replied mentally. Could that be this world's equivalent to chakra? Perhaps. Though I sense something else too, a discord in the natural flow. Something unnatural is affecting this world's energy balance. Before Naruto could pursue this line of thought further, Robin awakened for her watch. She moved with silent grace, showing no grogginess despite the brief rest. The currents have shifted in our favor, she noted, studying the water's movement. We're making better time than expected. Naruto nodded, impressed by her navigational awareness. This world's oceans seem more alive somehow. The Grand Line is unlike any other sea, Robin agreed. Some believe it has a consciousness of its own. The weather changes in minutes, islands have their own magnetic fields, and the creatures that dwell beneath the surface defy classification. She glanced at him. Your world, is it primarily land-based? Mostly, yes. We have oceans, but our nations are built on continents. The 5 great shinobi countries form the political backbone. Though there are many smaller nations as well. 5 nations, Robin mused. Our world has one dominant government with over 170 member nations, though many areas remain outside their direct control. The sea itself is divided into sections: East Blue, West Blue, North Blue, South Blue, and the Grand Line that runs between them. Beyond that lies the New World, where only the strongest dare to venture. Dawn broke gradually, revealing a silhouette on the horizon that resolved into an island dominated by a bustling port town. Ships of various sizes crowded the harbor, everything from SMALL fishing vessels to impressive galleons. Tristram, Robin said, keep your abilities hidden if possible. The town may not be under direct marine control, but informants are everywhere, and word travels fast on the Grand Line. They docked at a small pier away from the main harbor, Robin paying the harbormaster with unfamiliar currency. Naruto followed her lead as they entered the town, taking the strange architecture and diverse population. People of all shapes, sizes, and colors mingled in the streets, some with features that would be considered mutations or kekkei in his world but seemed commonplace here. Robin led him to a modest inn called the Sleeping Shark. We can rest here briefly and gather information, she said as they entered the dimly lit establishment. The owner is discreet and doesn't ask questions. The innkeeper, a burly man with an impressive mustache, nodded to Robin with familiarity. The usual room, Miss Scholar. 2 rooms this time, she replied, sliding coins across the counter. And any news of marine activity in the area? The innkeeper lowered his voice. They've been through twice this week, unusual for this territory. Asking about ruins and ancient symbols. Seemed particularly interested in altares. Robin's expression remained neutral, but Naruto caught the slight tension in her shoulders. Interesting. Any particular officer leading the inquiries? Captain Varen, the innkeeper replied. Cold One, he is. Has some new weapon too, strange metal gauntlet that glows blue. Used it to punch through my best oak table when a customer wouldn't answer fast enough. He shrugged apologetically. Just thought you should know, given your interests. Thank you, Robin said, accepting the room keys. If any Marines return, we were never here. The innkeeper tapped his nose knowingly. Never seen you before in my life, miss. Their rooms were simple but clean, connected by an adjoining door. Naruto sat on the edge of the bed, processing the information they'd just received. This Captain Varen concerns me, Robin said from the doorway. The description of his weapon doesn't match any known marine technology. Could it be from my world? Naruto suggested. A chakra-based weapon that somehow crossed over. Possibly. Robin frowned. Which raises uncomfortable questions about how long these dimensional crossings have been occurring, and who might be orchestrating them. A commotion outside drew their attention. From the window, they could see people gathering in the town square where a marine squad had assembled. A tall officer, presumably Captain Varen, stood on a raised platform, addressing the crowd. By order of Marine Headquarters, we seek information on these individuals, Varen announced, holding up 2 wanted posters. Even from a distance, Naruto could see that one showed Robin's face. The other, to his shock, appeared to be a crude sketch of himself, spiky hair, facial markings, and all. Nico Robin, the devil child, worth 130 million berries. Varen continued, and this unidentified individual, temporarily designated as the Dimension Walker, believed to be working with her. Approach with extreme caution. Both are considered highly dangerous. Robin's expression darkened. Dimension Walker. They know. She turned to Naruto. Someone in the Marines already knows you're from another world. That's not information they could have deduced from a brief encounter on the beach. Unless they've been monitoring dimensional disturbances, Naruto reasoned. Or they caused them, Robin finished grimly. We need to leave. Now. They gathered their minimal belongings quickly. Robin led them out through a back entrance, navigating the narrow alleys of Tristram with practiced ease. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a Marine patrol. It's them, one Marine shouted, reaching for his weapon. Naruto reacted instantly, sweeping Robin behind him and forming a Rasengan in his palm. The wing sphere illuminated the alley as the Marines backed away in alarm. We don't want to fight, Naruto stated firmly. Let us pass. Stand down, men, came a cold voice from behind the patrol. The Marines parted to reveal Captain Varen, a tall, imposing figure with a shaved head and piercing green eyes. His right arm ended in a metal gauntlet that pulsed with blue energy, just as the innkeeper had described. Naruto Uzumaki, Varen said, his voice carrying an eerie familiarity with the name. Former Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, current Hokage of Konohagakure. A long way from home, aren't you? Naruto's blood ran cold. This man shouldn't know any of those terms. Who are you really? He demanded, chakra flaring golden around his form. Varen smiled thinly. Someone who understands the value of crossing boundaries. The dimensional barriers are thinning, Uzumaki. Your presence here is both proof and catalyst. His gauntlet hummed louder as he raised it. My employer has waited centuries for this convergence. You won't be interfering. A beam of energy shot from the gauntlet. Naruto pushed Robin aside and dodged, the blast obliterating the wall behind them. The energy felt like corrupted chakra, familiar yet fundamentally wrong. Run, Naruto shouted to Robin, creating a dozen shadow clones that charged toward Varen and his men. Robin nodded, understanding the tactical advantage of separation. Meet at the North Harbor. She called back, sprouting arms from the ground that tripped pursuing Marines as she disappeared down a side alley. Naruto's clones engaged the Marines while he faced Varen directly. The captain moved with surprising speed, his gauntlet leaving trails of blue light as he swung at Naruto's head. Who is your employer? Naruto demanded, blocking the strike a kunai he'd pulled from a hidden pocket. Varen's smile widened. The one who watches from between worlds. The one who recognized your potential long before you did. He launched a flurry of strikes that Naruto parried or evaded. Did you think it was coincidence that your world's Jinchuriki system so closely paralleled our devil fruits? Both methods of binding power to human vessels. A glancing blow from the gauntlet caught Naruto's shoulder, sending a shock of disrupted chakra through his system. He winced, leaping backward to create distance. His weapon disrupts chakra flow, Kurama growled. Similar to those bullets from earlier, but more targeted. It's familiar somehow. Naruto didn't have time to explore that thought. Varen pressed his advantage, the gauntlet now a mana. What looked disturbingly like a corrupted version of the Rasengan. Your technique, improved, Varen taunted, lunging forward. Naruto formed his own Rasengan, larger and purer. The two spiraling energy balls collided in a deafening explosion that shattered windows throughout the street and knocked both combatants backward. Recovering first, Naruto entered Sage mode, the natural energy enhancing his perception and strength. Through these heightened senses, he could now see what Kurama had detected. Varen's gauntlet contained a power source that didn't belong in this world. It pulsed with erupted chakra that seemed to be drawing energy from the surrounding environment. That weapon isn't from either of our worlds, Naruto realized aloud. It's something else entirely. Varen laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Perceptive. My employer understands that power transcends dimensional boundaries. As do I. He tapped the gauntlet against his temple. He opened my eyes, Uzumaki. Showed me that loyalty to a single world is limiting. Marines surrounded them, weapons raised but holding fire as their captain engaged the intruder. Civilians had long since fled the area, leaving the street eerily deserted. Naruto weighed his options. He could defeat Varen, possibly kill him, but that wouldn't provide answers. And escalating further would risk civilian casualties if the battle spread through town. Your employer, Naruto pressed, maintaining his combat stance, does he have a name? Varen's expression shifted subtly. Names have power. You'll meet him soon enough. He's quite interested in you and the Devil Child. Your unique energies hold the key to his ascension. Without warning, Varen slammed his gauntlet into the ground. The street erupted, forcing Naruto to leap high into the air. From this vantage point, he saw Robin at the far end of town, already boarding a small vessel at the North Harbor. Decision made, Naruto formed a massive Rasengan overhead. Tell your employer that if he wants to meet me, he doesn't need to send lackeys or create dimensional rifts. I'm not hard to find. He drove the spiraling sphere into the center of the marine formation, carefully controlling the blast to disable rather than kill. The resulting explosion created a crater in the street and a cloud of dust that provided perfect cover. Naruto sped through the confusion, racing toward the harbor where Robin waited. Behind him, he heard Varen's enraged shout, "Find them! Alert all marine vessels in the quadrant!" Robin had already prepared the small fishing boat for immediate departure. Her expression was tense but composed as Naruto leapt aboard. "Captain Varen," she asked tersely, unfurling the sail. "Delayed, not defeated," Naruto replied, creating clones to row them swiftly from the harbor. "He knows things he shouldn't. About me, about my world. And that weapon of his channels corrupted chakra." Robin guided them into open water with practiced efficiency. "The way he spoke about you on the platform. He called you the Dimension Walker, with such certainty. He's working for someone interested in both of us," Naruto explained as they put distance between themselves and Tristram. "Someone who apparently knows about dimensional convergence, and has been planning for it." Once they were safely beyond immediate pursuit, Robin set a course southeast. "Altari's Lee's 3 days' journey in that direction," she said, pointing toward a bank of distant clouds. "If the Marines are specifically interested in that island, it confirms my suspicions about its importance." Naruto nodded, his mind racing with implications. Varen mentioned his employer waiting centuries for this convergence. Who in your world lives that long? No one. Through natural means, Robin replied thoughtfully. Though certain devil fruits can extend life, and there are rumors of immortality techniques used by the 5 elders of the world government. She paused, considering. Or it could be someone who exists outside normal time, a being from yet another dimension who observes multiple worlds. The concept sent a chill through Naruto. The Otsutsuki clan had manipulated his world for generations, harvesting chakra and cultivating power. Could a similar entity be operating here? In my world, he said slowly, we faced beings called the Otsutsuki, dimensional travelers who consumed world's energy sources. They seeded planets with their essence and returned centuries later to harvest the results. Robin's eyes widened slightly. That parallels some of the ancient texts I've studied. They speak of star visitors, who planted seeds of power in the world's veins and would return when the garden was ripe. They looked at each other, the implications settling heavily between them. If we're dealing with something like the Otsutsuki, Naruto continued, then your world and mine could both be in danger. These dimensional rifts might be the first stage of an invasion, or a harvesting. Then our priority remains reaching Altari's, Robin concluded. The answers we seek are there, both for returning you home and understanding this threat. As they sailed toward the horizon, Naruto felt a familiar determination rising within him, the same resolve that had carried him through wars and personal loss. Beside him, Robin's calm exterior masked a similar steel. They were both survivors, people who had faced persecution and emerged stronger. We make a good team, Naruto observed, watching as she confidently navigated their small vessel through increasingly choppy waters. Robin glanced at him, a hint of surprise in her eyes before she offered a small, genuine smile. Yes, she agreed, I suppose we do. 3 days at sea gave them ample time to exchange stories and information. Robin explained the fundamentals of her world, the balance of powers between the Marines, the Revolutionary Army, and the various pirate factions. Naruto described the shinobi system, the nature of chakra, and the recent peace that had settled over his world after years of conflict. They discovered unexpected parallels between their personal histories, both orphaned young, both feared for powers beyond their control, both finding family in unexpected places. The similarities created an unspoken understanding between them, a recognition that transcended their different origins. On the morning of the fourth day, a massive storm descended without warning. Robin handled the small boat expertly, but the waves grew to monstrous heights, threatening to capsize them at any moment. Grand line weather, Robin shouted over the howling wind. Unpredictable and violent. Naruto channeled chakra to his feet, securing himself to the deck as he helped Robin manage the sail. Rain lashed at them like needles, and lightning split the sky in jagged patterns. There, Robin pointed through the deluge. Altares. The island loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the storm-gray sky. Its shoreline was rocky and forbidding, with massive stone formations rising like teeth from the churning surf. No harbor was visible, only unbroken cliffs and crashing waves. I don't see a landing spot, Naruto called back. Because there isn't one on this side, Robin replied grimly. The only safe approach is from the west, but this current is pushing us straight toward the eastern cliffs. A massive wave rose before them, a wall of water that would surely smash their small vessel to splinters. Naruto made his decision instantly. Hold on to me, he shouted, wrapping an arm around Robin's waist. She complied without hesitation, recognizing the necessity of trust. Naruto entered his full chakra mode, golden energy enveloping them both as the wave crashed down. Instead of fighting the water's power, he used it, letting the surge carry them toward the cliffs while his chakra protected them from being crushed. As they approached the jagged rocks, Naruto leapt from the disintegrating boat, carrying Ro. Bin in a chakra-enhanced jump that sent them soaring over the cliffs to land safely on solid ground beyond. They stood in the pouring rain, Robin still held securely in Naruto's arms as his chakra cloak faded. For a moment, neither moved, processing their narrow escape and the unexpected proximity. Then, with professional composure, Robin stepped back. Quick thinking, she said, pushing wet hair from her face. Though I'm afraid we've lost our transportation. Naruto glanced back at the churning sea, where pieces of their boat were already disappearing among the rocks. We're alive, and we've reached Altares. I'd call that a win. Robin nodded, surveying their surroundings. They stood on a grassy plateau that extended inland toward a dense forest. Through the curtain of rain, stone struck. Yours were visible among the trees, clearly ancient and weathered by centuries of exposure. The ruins, she said, her archaeologist's enthusiasm breaking through her usual reserve. They're extensive, far larger than I anticipated. They made their way toward the forest, seeking shelter from the relentless storm. Under the canopy, the rainfall lessened to a gentle patter, allowing them to better observe their surroundings. The ruins were unlike anything Naruto had seen before, massive stone blocks carved with intricate symbols, arranged in circular patterns that reminded him vaguely of the layout of certain ceiling jutsu. Nature had reclaimed much of the site, with vines wrapping around columns and trees growing through what had once been floors. Robin moved through the ruins with reverent focus, her trained eye cataloging details that would escape most observers. She paused before a particularly large wall covered in the symbols Naruto had seen in her journal. This is it, she breathed, her fingers tracing the ancient carvings. The most complete text I've ever found about dimensional convergence. Naruto stood beside her, studying the wall. Though he couldn't read the symbols, the images were clear enough. Figures moving between circular portals, energy flows connecting different realms, and at the center, the spiral eye symbol that Robin had shown him earlier. Can you translate it? He asked. Robin nodded slowly, her eyes moving methodically across the carvings. It speaks of the cosmic rhythm of worlds that breathe together, and barriers that thin when the celestial alignment occurs. Her finger traced a series of symbols that resembled a calendar or star chart. According to this, these alignments happen once every 5 centuries. And the last one was now, Robin replied, her voice hushed with realization. We're in the middle of it. The alignment began 3 months ago and will reach its peak. She studied the symbols more carefully. In 2 days, Naruto frowned. That can't be coincidence. The dimensional rifts in my world started appearing around that same time. The text mentions a guardian of the threshold, who maintains balance between realms, Robin continued. But it warns of the devourer between worlds who seeks to break the barriers permanently. The guardian could be this employer Varen mentioned, Naruto suggested. One who's been watching and waiting for the alignment. Robin shook her head. I don't think so. The text presents the guardian as a positive force. The devourer is described as one who was cast out from his own realm, seeking to consume others to regain what was lost. The description stirred something in Naruto's memory. Like an Otsutsuki who was banished or defeated, he mused. They were owned to consume world's chakra to enhance their own power. A faint sound, barely perceptible, caught Naruto's attention. His years of shinobi training had honed his senses to detect the slightest disruption. We're not alone, he whispered to Robin. She nodded almost imperceptibly, having picked up on the same cue. Marines, she murmured. I don't think so, Naruto replied. The presence he sensed as different, powerful in a way that reminded him of encountering another Jinchuriki. Stay close. They moved deeper into the ruins, following a corridor that led to what appeared to be a central chamber. The ceiling had partially collapsed, allowing weak sunlight to filter through as the storm abated outside. In the center of the room stood a circular platform inscribed with the same spiral eye symbol. This must be where the barriers between worlds are thinnest, Robin observed, approaching the platform cautiously. According to the text, this is a nexus point, where dimensions intersect. Before Naruto could respond, a slow clapping echoed through the chamber. A figure stepped from the shadows, a tall man with pale blue skin and white hair that fell to his shoulders. He wore elaborate robes embroidered with the same symbols that covered the ruins, and his eyes were entirely black except for golden irises that seemed to glow with inner light. Impressive deduction, Nico Robin, the stranger said, his voice carrying an unnatural resonance. Few humans have understood these texts so quickly. Then again, you were always special, the last scholar of Ohara, keeper of forbidden knowledge. Robin tensed, crossing her arms in preparation to use her devil fruit power. Who are you? The stranger smiled, revealing teeth that came to subtle points. I have had many names across many worlds. In this one, some have called me Terechi. In others, I am known as the Watcher. But my true name would mean nothing to you. His golden gaze shifted to Naruto. The Hokage himself. How unexpected and yet, perfect. The vessel of Kurama, crossing into this realm just as the barriers weaken. The symmetry is beautiful. Naruto stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Robin. You're the one behind the dimensional rifts, aren't you? Varen's employer. Terechi inclined his head. Varen is a useful tool, nothing more. As for the rifts, I merely encouraged what was already happening naturally. The 5-century cycle brings the worlds into alignment, making passage between them possible. I simply widened the doors. For what purpose? Robin demanded, her usual calm giving way to intensity. Evolution, my dear. Terechi spread his arms wide. These separate worlds have developed different energy systems, chakra, haki, devil fruits. Imagine the potential if these powers were combined. I've spent centuries preparing for this convergence, gathering knowledge, establishing connections in both realms. Naruto's eyes narrowed. You're an Otsutsuki. It wasn't a question. Terechi's smile widened. Not quite. Though I understand the comparison. The Otsutsuki are crude harvesters, consuming worlds and moving on. My vision is more refined. I don't wish to destroy these worlds but to remake them. To become their god. He gestured to the platform. This nexus will serve as the foundation. When the alignment reaches its peak, I will channel the combined energies of both worlds through it, merging the realms permanently, with myself at the center of the new order. Robin's expression darkened. And the consequences for everyone else. Change always requires sacrifice, Terechi replied dismissively. Many will perish in the merging, those too weak to adapt to the combined energies. But those who survive will be stronger. And their children will be magnificent. Hybrids capable of wielding both chakra and devil fruit powers. You're talking about genocide on a multi-dimensional scale, Naruto said, feeling Kurama's rage building within him. Terechi shrugged elegantly. I prefer to see it as pruning to encourage new growth. In any case, the process has already begun. The barriers continue to thin, and nothing can stop the convergence now. His golden eyes gleamed. Though I admit, having both of you here is an unexpected boon. Your unique energies will make excellent catalysts. With blinding speed, he lunged forward, hands outstretched toward them both. Naruto reacted instantly, pushing Robin aside while blocking Terachi's strike with a chakra-enhanced arm. The impact sent shockwaves through the chamber, cracking stone columns and dislodging debris from above. Terachi's strength was immense, beyond what any human should possess. Robin recovered quickly, crossing her arms. Vinta fleur. 20 arms sprouted from Terachi's body, attempting to restrain him. He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Devil fruit powers. So fascinating. With a pulse of energy that reminded Naruto of a chakra burst, he dispelled Robin's arms in a shower of flower petals. But ultimately limited by human imagination. Naruto created shadow clones that surrounded Terachi, each forming a Rasengan. They attacked simultaneously, driving the spiraling chakra spheres toward their target from all directions. Terachi moved with impossible grace, evading most of the attacks while countering others with energy blasts from his palms. One Rasengan grazed his shoulder, tearing his robe and revealing skin that cracked like porcelain before rapidly healing. Magnificent, Terachi breathed, his eyes alight with excitement. Such power, such control. The perfect vessel. Vessel, Naruto echoed, a chill running down his spine. Of course, Terachi smiled coldly. Did you think I would risk my own essence in the merger? No, I require suitable vessels to channel the energies, one from each world. With exceptional capacity and resilience. His gaze flickered between Naruto and Robin. A Jinchuriki and a devil fruit user with extraordinary mental discipline. Your ideal. Robin's eyes widened with understanding. The ruins mentioned a sacrifice, 2 souls to anchor the merged worlds. Very good, Terachi nodded approvingly. The scholar's intellect is as sharp as promised. Yes, your consciousness will be displaced. Your bodies will remain as conduits, directed by my will. That's not happening, Naruto growled, golden chakra beginning to manifest around him. Beside him, Robin took a combat stance, her expression resolute. Terachi sighed theatrically. I anticipated resistance. Fortunately, I've prepared accordingly. He snapped his fingers, and a section of the chamber wall shimmered, revealing a hidden alcove. Captain Varen stepped through, his glowing gauntlet humming with energy. Behind him came marine soldiers, but their movements were wrong, jerky and mechanical. And their eyes glowed with the same golden light as Terachi's. My puppets, Terachi explained casually. Varen retains some autonomy, his ambition makes him useful. The others are merely shells. Their minds already sacrificed to my cause. Monster, Robin whispered, horror evident in her voice. Visionary, Terachi corrected. Now, shall we proceed with minimal damage to your vessels? Or must we do this the painful way? Naruto exchanged a glance with Robin, an unspoken plan forming between them. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. I choose the third option, Naruto replied, suddenly slamming a specialized Rasengan into the floor, one designed to emit a blinding flash rather than destructive force. The light exploded through the chamber, temporarily blinding Terachi and his puppets. In that moment, Naruto grabbed Robin and used his Flying Thunder God technique, a jutsu he rarely employed but had mastered in adulthood, to teleport them outside the ruins. They emerged near the forest edge, overlooking the stormy sea that had begun to calm. Robin blinked in disorientation. What just happened? She asked. Space-time ninjutsu, Naruto explained quickly. It won't take Terachi long to find us. We need a plan. Robin nodded, composure returning quickly. He needs the Nexus platform for the dimensional merger. If we can destroy it, we might prevent the worst of his plan. And perhaps find a way to send me home in the process, Naruto added. But we'll need to deal with Terachi and his puppets first. I may have an idea about that, Robin said thoughtfully. The ruins mentioned a sealing technique used by the ancient people to contain threats from other dimensions. If I can decipher it quickly enough. A distant explosion interrupted her, followed by a column of light shooting skyward from the central chamber. He's beginning the process early, Naruto realized. Using the energy he already has to start the merger. Then we have no time to waste, Robin concluded. They shared a look of determination, two survivors who had faced impossible odds before and prevailed. As they prepared to confront Terachi, Naruto felt something unexpected, a sense of perfect alignment with this woman from another world. Despite knowing her for mere days, they moved together with the synchronicity of longtime comrades. Perhaps it was their shared experiences as outcasts. Or perhaps something deeper, a recognition of kindred spirits across dimensional boundaries. Whatever the cause, as they raced back toward the ruins to confront a being who threatened both their worlds, Naruto knew with certainty that they would face this challenge as they had faced all others in their lives, with unwavering determination and the refusal to surrender that had defined their existence since childhood. The light from the central chamber grew brighter, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Time was running out. Chapter 1 end. Chapter 2. Convergence of Fates. The earth shuddered beneath their feet as Naruto and Robin raced back toward the ruins. The sky above had taken on an unnatural hue, swirling purples and blues that reminded Naruto of the dimensional tear that had brought him to this world. The merger is accelerating, Robin called over the growing wind. He's drawing power from both dimensions simultaneously. Naruto nodded grimly. Having witnessed the devastation caused by chakra-based weapons in his own world, he could only imagine the catastrophe that would result from forcibly combining two-dimensional energy systems. What exactly does this sealing technique require? He asked as they navigated the increasingly unstable terrain. Robin's eyes were focused on the path ahead, her mind clearly racing. According to the wall inscriptions, it requires two components, a physical medium to contain the entity and a dual energy counterflow to reverse the dimensional pull. In simpler terms, Naruto pressed, we need something to trap him in. And we need to create an energy pattern that pushes instead of pulls, Robin translated. The ancients used special stones as vessels, but we don't have time to locate one. Naruto's mind worked quickly. What about a shadow clone? They're physical vessels made of chakra, would that work? Robin considered this. Possibly, if your clone could withstand containing an entity like Terachi, even temporarily. It won't last long, Naruto admitted, but it might buy us enough time to disrupt the Nexus platform. They reached the edge of the central chamber, taking cover behind a collapsed column. The scene inside was apocalyptic. Terachi stood at the center of the platform, arms raised as energy poured from his body into a swirling vortex above. Captain Varen and his puppet marines were positioned at precise intervals around the platform, their bodies serving as conduits for additional power. Most disturbing was the dimensional rift that had formed directly over the platform, a tear in reality that showed flickering images of Konoha on the other side. Naruto could see the Hokage monument, his own face carved in stone alongside his predecessors. He's connected the worlds already, Naruto whispered. We're running out of time. Robin studied the scene with analytical precision. The Nexus platform has 5 key points, she observed, pointing to carved bowls that glowed with increasing intensity. If we disrupt those simultaneously, it might destabilize the entire process. I can handle that with shadow clones, Naruto confirmed. But first we need to deal with Terachi and his puppets. Robin nodded, then reached into her pack and withdrew her journal. Flipping to a page filled with hastily sketched symbols, she showed Naruto a complex circular design. This is the sealing pattern. If you can replicate it with your chakra while containing him in your clone, I'll make it work, Naruto assured her, committing the pattern to memory. Years of mastering complex fuinjutsu as Hokage had prepared him for precisely this kind of adaptation. Their planning was interrupted as Terachi's voice boomed throughout the chamber. I know you've returned, Hokage, scholar. Why resist what is inevitable? Come, be part of the new order. The energy surrounding him pulsed, sending a shockwave through the ruins that nearly dislodged Naruto and Robin from their hiding place. Now, Naruto whispered. They burst from cover, moving in perfect synchronization. Robin crossed her arms in her characteristic stance. Cien Fleur. Chain. 100 arms sprouted in a line, forming a chain that snaked across the chamber floor toward the puppet marines. Simultaneously, Naruto created 20 shadow clones. 5 broke off to target the Nexus points, while the others engaged Captain Varen, who had already activated his glowing gauntlet and rushed to intercept. Terachi observed their attack with apparent amusement. Impressive coordination for two beings from different dimensions, he commented. Never pausing his ritual, but futile. Robin's chain of arms reached the first puppet marine, grabbing his ankles and yanking him off the platform. Instantly, the energy flow distorted, causing Terechi to frown. Emboldened, her arms continued to target the other marines, disrupting their formation. Insolent woman, Terechi snarled, his composed facade cracking. He gestured sharply, sending a blast of energy toward Robin. Naruto's clone intercepted the blast, dispersing in a cloud of smoke. The real Naruto had already entered Sage mode, his sensory abilities enhanced as he analyzed the energy patterns flowing through the chamber. The nexus points are connected to the rift, he called to Robin. They're drawing energy from both worlds. Robin nodded in understanding, continuing her systematic removal of the puppet marines. Each one displaced caused the energy pattern to fluctuate, and Terechi's expression grew increasingly agitated. Varen Pr. Oved more challenging than the mindless puppets. His gauntlet fired blasts of corrupted chakra that dispersed Naruto's clones on contact. Your world will serve as the foundation for our new power, he shouted, eyes blazing with fanatical devotion. Lord Terechi has promised me abilities beyond any devil fruit. He's using you, Naruto replied, dodging another blast. Just like those marines. You're a tool, not an ally. Doubt flickered briefly across Varen's face before his expression hardened again. Better to serve in the new order than perish in the old. The exchange gave Naruto an insight. Robin, he called, his puppets retain some consciousness. They're not completely gone. Robin processed this information quickly. Instead of simply restraining the next marine, her sprouted arms turned his face toward the ritual, forcing him to witness what he was part of. See what your captain has reduced you to, she said firmly. Remember who you are. The marine's golden eyes flickered, momentarily returning to their natural color before Terechi's control reasserted itself. But that brief resistance was enough to disrupt the energy flow further. Clever, Terechi hissed, but inadequate. He abandoned his position at the center of the platform, moving with blinding speed toward Robin. His hands had transformed, fingers elongating into razor-sharp talons that slashed at her. Robin twisted away, but one claw caught her shoulder, drawing blood. She grimaced but maintained her devil fruit ability, continuing to disrupt the marine formation. Naruto felt a surge of protective rage. 5 of his clones converged on Terechi, each attacking from different angles with Rasengan variants. Terechi moved with inhuman grace, evading most while counter-attacking with energy blasts that dispersed 2 clones instantly. Your connection is fascinating, Terechi observed, glancing between Naruto and Robin. 2 souls from different dimensions, finding such immediate alignment. Perha. P.S. You were always meant to be my vessels. Or perhaps we recognize a common enemy, Robin countered, wincing as she pressed a hand to her wounded shoulder. Naruto's clones had reached the 5 nexus points by now, each preparing to disrupt their assigned position. The remaining clones surrounded Terechi, waiting for an opening. Now, Naruto commanded. The 5 clones simultaneously slammed specialized Rasengans into the nexus points. Instead of the usual destructive sphere, these contained the sealing pattern Robin had shown him, designed to reverse the energy flow. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The platform's glow intensified before flickering erratically. The rift above wavered, the image of Konoha distorting. Terechi's confident expression gave way to fury. No, he roared, abandoning his attack on Robin to lunge toward the nearest nexus point. This was the opening Naruto had been waiting for. His remaining clones dog-piled Terechi, restraining him just long enough for Naruto to finish forming a specialized clone, one infused with both his chakra and natural energy. Robin, now, Naruto shouted. Robin understood immediately. Crossing her arms in a new configuration, she called out. Mille fleur. Gigantsko mono. 2 enormous arms formed from thousands of smaller ones, grabbing Terechi and forcing him toward Naruto's waiting clone. Impossible. Terechi snarled, his body emitting pulses of energy that withered Robin's giant hands. But they had done their job, bringing him within range. The specialized clone grabbed Terechi, its body glowing with the sealing pattern. Uzumaki sealing technique. Dimensional containment. Naruto called, channeling chakra into the clone. Terechi struggled violently as the clone began to absorb him, his form distorting as if being pulled into a vortex. "You can't comprehend what you're disrupting," he shouted, his voice taking on a multi-toned quality that echoed throughout the chamber. "The merger is the natural evolution. Without it, both worlds will eventually collapse. We'll take our chances," Naruto replied grimly, maintaining the sealing technique despite the strain it placed on his chakra network. Varen, seeing his master being sealed, abandoned his fight with Naruto's other clones and charged toward the main action, gauntlet pulsing with deadly energy. "Release Lord Terachi," he commanded. Robin intercepted him, arms sprouting from his own body to twist the gauntlet away from Naruto. "Your master used you," she said coldly. "Used all of you. Look at your fellow Marines, reduced to mindless puppets." Varen's gaze flickered to his subordinates, some now collapsed on the ground as Terachi's control wavered. Doubt crossed his features again, stronger this time. "He promised power," Varen said, his voice less certain. "At what cost?" Robin pressed. "Your humanity, your world." Before Varen could respond, a massive tremor shook the chamber. The Nexus platform began to crack, lines spreading out. Ward from the 5 points where Naruto's clones had disrupted the energy flow. "It's working," Robin called. "The dimensional connection is destabilizing." Indeed, the rift above was shrinking, the age of Konoha fading like a television losing signal. Terachi was now half absorbed into the specialized clone, his body seeming to fold inward upon itself. "Fools," he raged, his voice distorting further. "You're condemning both worlds. The cycle has progressed too far to simply abort." Naruto felt the truth in these words through his sage mode senses. The energies swirling through the chamber aren't simply receding. They were becoming more chaotic, more volatile. The clone containing Terachi was bulging outward in places, struggling to maintain its integrity. "Robin," Naruto called urgently. "He's right about one thing. This energy needs somewhere to go. The disruption is becoming unstable." Robin quickly scanned the chamber, her archaeologist's knowledge and quick mind working in tandem. The ancients must have had a release mechanism for excess energy during dimensional events, she reasoned. Her eyes locked on a series of channels carved into the floor, all leading to a secondary chamber. There, those channels would direct overflow to that room. Naruto nodded, understanding. "My clone won't hold him much longer. When it breaks, all that energy will release at once. Then we need to move him to the secondary chamber before that happens," Robin concluded. They worked with urgent precision, Robin using her devil fruit powers to create a path of arms that helped guide Naruto as he maneuvered the increasingly unstable clone containing Terachi toward the secondary chamber. Varen watched in conflicted silence, his gauntlet's glow diminishing as the energy feeding it decreased. The puppet Marines had collapsed entirely, some beginning to stir with their natural consciousness returning. The clone containing Terachi was now barely recognizable as humanoid, having become a writhing mass of energy and partially visible body parts. Terachi's face occasionally emerged from the surface, contorted in rage and pain. "You haven't won," he gasped during one such emergence. "The convergence will happen. If not through me, then naturally. It is inevitable." "Maybe," Naruto acknowledged, straining to maintain the seal, "but it won't be today, and it won't be under your control." They reached the secondary chamber, a smaller circular room with walls covered in the same spiral eye symbol that had become so familiar. At its center was a depression in the floor that seemed designed to contain something. "That's where the energy should be directed," Robin confirmed, pointing to the depression. With a final effort, Naruto positioned the unstable clone directly over it. "Time to end this," he said, releasing the chakra that had been maintaining the clone's integrity. The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. The clone burst open, releasing Terachi and the enormous energy he had accumulated. But instead of exploding outward, the energy was drawn downward into the depression, following the ancient channels designed for precisely this purpose. Terachi's physical form began to dissolve, pulled along with the energy. "This isn't defeat," he insisted, his voice echoing strangely as his body lost cohesion. "It's merely delay. I've existed for centuries. I can wait." His golden eyes fixed on Naruto. "We will meet again, Hokage. In this life or another." With those ominous words, Terachi's form collapsed entirely, drawn down into the depression along with the last of the dimensional energy. A blinding flash filled the chamber, forcing Naruto and Robin to shield their eyes. When the light faded, the depression had sealed itself, leaving a smooth stone surface etched with the spiral eye symbol. Now dormant and dark. For several moments, neither spoke, processing what had just occurred. "Is he gone?" Robin finally asked, approaching the sealed depression cautiously. "Sealed, at least temporarily," Naruto replied, his sage mode allowing him to sense the diminished but still present energy beneath the stone. "The ancients designed this system well." Robin nodded, her scholar's appreciation evident despite their exhaustion. They understood the cyclical nature of dimensional convergence and prepared accordingly. They made their way back to the main chamber, where the Nexus platform had stopped glowing entirely. The rift had closed, leaving only clear air where the portal to Konoha had been. The surviving Marines were regaining consciousness. Confused and disoriented but free of Terachi's control, Captain Varen stood amid the ruins, staring at his gauntlet, which had gone completely dark. When he looked up at their approach, his eyes held a haunted quality. "What have I done?" he whispered. "You were manipulated," Robin said, her tone neither accusing nor forgiving. As were they. She gestured to the recovering Marines. Varen removed the gauntlet slowly, letting it fall to the stone floor with a hollow clang. "He showed me visions. Power beyond imagination." I believed him. He looked directly at Naruto. "What happens now?" Naruto considered the man thoughtfully. In his years as Hokage, he had learned that redemption often began with a single moment of clarity. "That depends on you," he answered. "The knowledge of dimensional travel is dangerous. What will you do with it?" Varen glanced at the sealed chamber, then at his former subordinates. "Protect against it," he said finally. "Ensure nothing like this happens again." He straightened, some of his military bearing returning. "The Marines should be guardians, not conquerors." Naruto nodded, satisfied with the answer. He turned to Robin, who was examining the now armand Nexus platform with a mixture of scholarly interest and concern. "The convergence was halted," she observed, "but not reversed. The connection between our worlds has been established, even if the active portal is closed." "Meaning?" Naruto prompted, though he suspected he knew. "Meaning the barriers remain thinned," Robin explained. "Future rifts are likely, though hopefully not of the magnitude Terachi was attempting to create." The implication hung between them. Naruto's path home might still exist, but it wasn't here, not anymore. "So I'm stranded," Naruto concluded, his voice calm despite the weight of realization. Robin's expression softened slightly. "Not necessarily. If rifts continue to form naturally, we might find one that leads back to your world. The ancient texts speak of echo points, locations where dimensional boundaries naturally thin during convergence periods." Hope rekindled in Naruto's chest. "Then we need to find these echo points." "We do," Robin agreed. "And I believe I know who might help us." She glanced toward the open sky visible through the collapsed roof. "My captain has an uncanny knack for achieving the impossible." Before Naruto could respond, a tremendous crash echoed from outside the ruins, followed by excited shouting. Robin's expression shifted to one of resigned amusement. "Speaking of whom," she murmured. They made their way outsea. To find a remarkable sight. A ship had somehow landed on the island's plateau, despite being a good distance from the ocean. It flew a black flag with a skull wearing a straw hat, and its figurehead was a smiling lion. A young man in a red vest and straw hat was bounding toward them, arms stretching to impossible lengths as he swung from tree to tree. Behind him came a diverse crew, a green-haired man with 3 swords. A blond man in a suit, a small reindeer walking upright, a blue-haired man wearing only a speedo, a woman with orange hair, a skeleton with an afro, and a long-nosed man clutching what appeared to be a slingshot. "Robian!" The straw-hatted young man shouted joyfully, his arms extending even further to wrap around her multiple times. "We found you. Nami said you were in trouble. There was a big storm and the Marines were after you and..." He stopped abruptly, noticing Naruto. "Who's this? A new friend. Does he want to join our crew? Is he strong?" "He looks strong." R.O. Bin winced slightly as his rubbery arms pressed against her injured shoulder, but she was smiling genuinely for the first time since Naruto had met her. "Luffy, everyone, this is Naruto Uzumaki. He's from very far away." She glanced at Naruto, a silent question in her eyes about how much to reveal. Naruto stepped forward, extending a hand to the enthusiastic young captain. "I'm a shinobi from another world," he said directly. Seeing no reason for half-truths. "Robin has been helping me understand this dimension and find a way back to mine." He expected surprise, disbelief, or at least questions. Instead, Luffy's eyes widened with excitement as he vigorously shook Naruto's hand. "Another world. That's so cool," Luffy shouted, bouncing on his feet. "What's it like? Do they have meat there? Can you do awesome ninja stuff? Show me." The green-haired swordsman sighed heavily. "Oi, Luffy, maybe let him breathe before interrogating him." "Indeed," the skeleton added, tipping his hat politely. "Though I have no lungs to breathe with." "Yo-ho ho. Naruto blinked in surprise at the talking skeleton, then found himself grinning. After everything he'd experienced, from befriending a giant fox, spirit to fighting aliens from another dimension, a skeleton with an afro hardly seemed strange. The orange-haired woman stepped forward, studying Naruto with shrewd eyes. "Another world, huh? That would explain the weird weather patterns and dimensional disturbances I've been tracking." She turned to Robin. "The log pose has been acting strange for weeks, spinning randomly, sometimes pointing straight up." Robin nodded. "There's been a dimensional convergence event. Naruto was brought here through a rift between our worlds. We just prevented someone from forcibly merging the dimensions, but the barriers remain thinned." The blonde man in the suit lit a cigarette, exhaling thoughtfully. "So the Marines were after you because they were being manipulated by an entity called Terachi," Robin explained. "He was using them to harness energy for the dimensional merger." The long-nosed man gulped audibly. "Is this Terachi guy still around? Because I suddenly have a case of can't fight interdimensional entities disease." "He's sealed away," Naruto assured him. "At least for now." Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during this explanation, suddenly punched one fist into his palm. "Okay, I've decided. We're going to help Naruto get back to his world." His crew's reactions ranged from resigned sighs to enthusiastic nods. Clearly, such impulsive decisions were common for their captain. "Just like that?" Naruto asked, somewhat bemused. "Just like that," Robin confirmed with a small smile. "When Luffy decides something, it tends to happen, regardless of how impossible it might seem." The small reindeer approached Robin, medical bag already open. "Let me see that shoulder, Robin. It looks painful." As the doctor treated Robin's wound, Naruto found himself surrounded by the curious crew. Each introduced themselves. Zoro the swordsman, Nami the navigator, Usopp the sniper, Sanji the cook, Chopper the doctor, Frankie the shipwright, and Brook the musician. "So you're really from another dimension?" Frankie asked, adjusting his sunglasses. "Super interesting. What kind of technology do you have there?" "It's different," Naruto replied, trying to find comparisons. "We have electricity and modern conveniences, but our most advanced technology revolves around chakra application rather than mechanical innovation." "Chakra?" Chopper looked up from treating Robin. "Is that like hockey?" Naruto considered this. From what Robin has explained, they're similar but different. Chakra is the combination of physical and spiritual energy that flows through all living things in my world. "Can you show us something?" Usopp asked, curiosity overcoming his initial caution. Naruto smiled, forming a shadow clone without hand signs. The Straw Hats watched in fascination as an exact duplicate of Naruto appeared beside him. "That's like my mirror fruit ability," Brook observed, "except you're not limited to reflective surfaces." Luffy's eyes sparkled with excitement. "What else can you do? Can you stretch? Can you turn into animals? Can you, Luffy?" Nami interrupted, bopping him lightly on the head. "Let's focus. Robin, do you have a plan for getting him home?" Robin, her shoulder now bandaged by Chopper, nodded. "The ancient texts mention echo points where dimensional barriers naturally thin during convergence periods. If we can locate these points, I'd find a rift leading back to Naruto's world." Nami considered this, her navigator's mind already working. "And you think these echo points would affect the log pose?" "It's likely," Robin confirmed. "They would create magnetic and gravitational anomalies. I've been tracking several such anomalies," Nami said thoughtfully. "The strongest is about 3 days' sail from here, near Carthage Island. Then that's where we're headed." Luffy declared. To Carthage Island. As the crew prepared to return to their ship, apparently named the Thousand Sunny, Naruto found himself walking alongside Robin. Your captain is enthusiastic, he observed. Robin chuckled softly. That's one word for him. Luffy sees the world very simply sometimes, but his heart is pure. When he decides to help someone, nothing will stop him. She glanced at Naruto. Much like a certain Hokage I've come to know. Naruto smiled, recognizing the comparison. I see why you found a home with this crew. Something vulnerable flickered across Robin's usually composed features. Yes, she said quietly. After a lifetime of running, they gave me a place where I could belong. The simple honesty of her statement resonated deeply with Naruto. His own journey from outcast to Hokage had been paved by the precious people who had accepted him despite the Nine Tails. I understand, he replied, equally honest. Their eyes met in silent acknowledgement of shared experience, two souls who had found their way from darkness into light through the connections they'd formed. The moment was interrupted by Luffy's enthusiastic call. Come on, you two. Sanji's making a feast to welcome Naruto. With meat. They followed the energetic captain back to the Thousand Sunny, where Naruto found himself welcomed as if he were an old friend rather than a stranger from another dimension. The ship itself was a marvel of engineering, combining traditional sailing designs with innovations he couldn't begin to understand. Frankie gave him a whirlwind tour, proudly showing off features from the soldier dock system to the lawn deck. She's designed to sail any sea, no matter how rough, the cyborg explained. Even dimensional seas, apparently. As evening fell, the crew gathered for the promised feast. Sanji had outdone himself, preparing dishes that showcased the best of this world's cuisine. Naruto found the food delicious, though very different from the ramen he favored back home. The meal was chaotic in the best way, Luffy stealing food from everyone's plates, Sanji protecting the women's portions with fierce dedication, Zoro and Sanji bickering over trivial matters, Brook playing lively music on his violin, and everyone peppering Naruto with questions about his world. So you're the leader of your village? Nami asked, impressed. Naruto nodded, a touch of homesickness coloring his response. The Hokage of Konohagakure. My shadow clone is probably handling things in my absence, but it can't maintain itself indefinitely. You have a family waiting? Robin inquired gently. A soft smile touched Naruto's lips. My wife, Hinata, and our children, Boruto and Himawari. They're strong. They'll manage until I return. And hey, have the whole village to support them. Then we definitely have to get you home, Luffy stated with absolute conviction, as if the matter were already settled. As the evening progressed, Naruto found himself sharing stories of his adventures, his battles against the Akatsuki, the fourth grade ninja war, and his journey to become Hokage. In return, the Straw Hats regaled him with their own exploits. Each tale more outlandish than the last. You challenge the entire world government for Robin's sake? Naruto asked, impressed by Luffy's unwavering loyalty to his crew. Of course, Luffy lied as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She's my nakama. Robin's expression softened at the memory, though Naruto noticed it still held traces of wonder, as if she couldn't quite bell. I have her good fortune in finding such friends. Later, as the celebration wound down, Naruto found himself at the ship's railing, gazing up at unfamiliar stars. The moon was full, casting silver light across the gently undulating sea. Despite the beauty of the scene, his thoughts drifted homeward. Kurama, who had been unusually quiet since their battle with Terachi, finally spoke. This world has its own kind of strength, the fox observed. Different from ours, but no less formidable. I was thinking the same thing, Naruto replied mentally. Their powers seem more specialized, but they've adapted remarkably well. The rubber boy reminds me of you at that age, ***, Kurama added, amusement coloring his mental voice. All determination and no sense. Naruto chuckled softly. I was going to say the same thing. Sharing a private joke. Robin's voice came from behind him. Naruto turned to find her approaching, a steaming cup in each hand. She offered one to him, which he accepted gratefully. The warm liquid had a pleasant herbal aroma. Just conversing with Kurama, Naruto explained. The Nine Tails sealed within me. He's been observing your world with interest. Robin settled beside him at the railing, her own cup cradled in her hands. A sentient being sealed inside you. That explains the dual energy signature I sensed during our battle. He's been with me since birth, Naruto elaborated. Though our relationship has evolved considerably over the years. From reluctant prisoner to trusted partner. Robin nodded thoughtfully, not unlike a devil fruit in some ways. Though with independent consciousness. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their drinks and watching the moonlight play across the water. Do you think we'll find a way? Naruto finally asked, the question that had been weighing on him since the portal closed. Robin considered this seriously. If anyone can find a path between worlds, it's this crew, she said. We've overcome obstacles that should have been impossible many times over. You have a remarkable family here, Naruto observed. Yes, Robin agreed softly. Though I imagine yours is equally remarkable in its way. Naruto smiled, thinking of Konoha. Not just his immediate family but the entire village he had sworn to protect. They are. Then we'll find a way to reunite you with them, Robin said with quiet confidence. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden lurch of the ship. The sea around them began to glow with an eerie blue light, and the air took on a charged quality that made the hairs on Naruto's arms stand up. What's happening? He asked, instantly alert. Robin frowned, setting her cup down. I'm not sure. This isn't normal, even for the Grand Line. The rest of the crew emerged from various parts of the ship. Drawn by the disturbance, Nami rushed to check her instruments, while Frankie headed for the helm. The log pose is spinning like crazy, Nami called, showing the Navigot ion device which was indeed whirling in all directions. The sea's glow intensified, and a familiar shimmering appeared in the air above the deck, a dimensional rift similar to the one that had brought Naruto to this world. Though much smaller, a spontaneous rift, Robin realized, eyes widening. Terachi was right. The convergence is continuing naturally, even with him sealed away. The rift pulsed, growing slightly before contracting again. Through its wavering surface, Naruto caught a glimpse of trees that looked like they might belong to the forest surrounding Konoha. That's my world, he exclaimed, stepping toward the rift. Wait, Robin cautioned. It's unstable. If you try to cross now, you might end up somewhere else entirely, or lost between dimensions. The rift flickered again, the image changing to show what appeared to be the interior of a cave, then a desert landscape, then back to the forest. It's cycling through multiple points in both dimensions, Robin explained. Without an anchor or stabilizing force, it's too dangerous to attempt crossing. Naruto reluctantly stepped back, knowing she was right. The risk of ending up somewhere worse, or nowhere at all, was too great. Luffy bounded forward, staring at the rift with unbridled curiosity. So that's a door to Naruto's world. Cool. He reached out as if to touch it. Don't. Everyone shouted simultaneously. Luffy withdrew his hand, pouting slightly. I just wanted to see. The rift pulsed once more, then began to shrink rapidly, collapsing in on itself until it vanished entirely. The sea's glow faded, returning to its normal moonlit state. It's gone, Chopper said unnecessarily. But its appearance confirms my theory, Robin noted, her scholarly mind already analyzing the event. Spontaneous rifts are forming as a result of the thinned dimensional barriers. If we can predict where they'll appear next. The anomaly I've been tracking near Carthage Island, Nami interjected. If that's an echo point as you described, we might find a more stable rift there. Or at least learn how to stabilize one long enough for safe passage, Robin agreed. Naruto stared at the spot where the rift had been, conflicting emotions warring within him. The glimpse of his world had intensified his desire to return home, yet he recognized the dangers of rushing the process. So we stick with the original plan, he concluded. Carthage Island. First thing tomorrow, Luffy confirmed, clapping a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Don't worry, we'll get you home. As the crew dispersed back to their previous activities or bed, Robin remained at the railing with Naruto. She seemed to sense his internal conflict without needing it explained. The appearance of a spontaneous rift is encouraging, she offered. It means the pathways exist. We just need to find one stable enough for crossing. Naruto nodded, grateful for her practical perspective. You're right, and honestly, if I had to be stranded in another dimension, I could have landed in much worse company. Robin smiled slightly. Indeed, Though I imagine a Hokage has more pressing responsibilities than a wandering archaeologist. Right now, my responsibility is to return safely. Naruto replied. My shadow clone can handle the paperwork. He grinned ruefully. Actually, that's one unexpected benefit of this situation. I'm temporarily free from the mountains of documents that come with leadership. Spoken like someone who has never seen the inside of Nami's navigation office, Robin remarked dryly. The paperwork of plotting a course through the Grand Line might rival your Hokage duties. Their shared laughter eased some of the tension from the evening's events. As the night deepened around them, Naruto found himself surprisingly content despite his circumstances. Tomorrow they would continue the search for his way home, but tonight, he had found new allies in a strange world, people who embodied the will of fire as surely as any shinobi of Konoha. Even if they called it by a different name. Somewhere in the distance, a shooting star streaked across the unfamiliar constellations, and Naruto allowed himself to hope. Chapter 2 End. C. Chapter 3. Bond stronger than fate. Dawn broke over the Thousand Sunny in a riot of gold and crimson. Naruto stood at the bow, watching the sun climb above the horizon. After years of paperwork and diplomatic meetings, there was something refreshing about the simple act of witnessing daybreak over an endless ocean. The salt-tinged breeze carried unfamiliar scents, alien yet increasingly comforting. 3 days had passed since they'd left Altares. 3 days of sailing toward Carthage Island and its promised dimensional anomaly. 3 days of growing closer to the unusual crew who had accepted him without reservation. You're up early, Robin observed, appearing silently beside him. She held 2 steaming mugs, offering one to Naruto. He accepted gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. Old habit. As Hokage, I learned to treasure the quiet moments before the day's chaos begins. Robin nodded in understanding. On a ship with Luffy, those moments are particularly precious. As if summoned by his name, an excited shout rang out from the crow's nest. Island. I see it. The peaceful moment shattered as the crew burst into activity. Luffy stretched his arms to propel himself to the figurehead, peering eagerly at the horizon. Nami emerged from her cabin with charts and instruments, while Frankie took the helm. Sanji headed to the kitchen, muttering about provisions, while Chopper and Usopp joined Luffy in excited speculation about what awaited them. Right on schedule, Nami announced, consulting her log pose. That's Carthage Island. Her expression grew more serious. And the magnetic disturbance is stronger than ever. Robin studied the approaching landmass with professional interest. According to my research, Carthage was once home to an advanced civilization that mysteriously vanished overnight. The world government declared it off limits for centuries. Which naturally means people kept trying to explore it anyway, Zoro added, joining them at the railing. Indeed, Robin confirmed. Most never returned. Those who did spoke of time distortions, phantom buildings that appeared and disappeared, and strange whispers in unknown languages. Sounds like the perfect place for a dimensional rift, Naruto commented, watching the island grow larger as they approached. Unlike Altares with its lush vegetation, Carthage Island appeared barren and forbidding. Jagged rock formations rose from gray shores, and a perpetual mist shrouded its interior. Most striking was the massive structure visible even through the haze, a towering spire of black stone that seemed to pierce the very sky. What is that? Naruto asked, pointing to the monolith. The Carthaginian Tower, Robin replied. Ancient texts call it the needle that stitches worlds. If dimensional travel was indeed possible for the ancient people, that tower would have been central to their methods. Then that's where we're headed, Luffy declared, already bouncing with anticipation. Nami's expression was more cautious. The waters around the island look treacherous. We'll need to anchor offshore and take the Mini Mary the rest of the way. As they drew closer, Naruto could see she was right. The coastline was a maze of partially submerged rocks and violently churning water. Something about the island's energy felt familiar yet distorted, not unlike the corrupted chakra from Varen's gauntlet. This place, Ace exists partially in multiple dimensions at once, Kurama observed within Naruto's mind. The barriers here are worn thin from repeated crossings. Be vigilant. Naruto relayed this information to Robin, who nodded thoughtfully. It aligns with the historical accounts. The Carthaginians may have been conducting dimensional experiments for centuries, gradually weakening the boundaries between worlds. The Thousand Sunny dropped anchor in a relatively calm inlet about half a mile from shore. After a brief discussion, they decided that a smaller group would investigate the tower first, Luffy, who couldn't be dissuaded anyway. Naruto, Robin, Zoro, and Nami to navigate. The rest of you keep the ship ready for a quick departure, Nami instructed as they boarded the Mini Mary. If anything goes wrong, we might need to leave in a hurry. When don't we? Usopp muttered, but nodded his agreement. The small vessel skimmed across the water toward the island's jagged shore. As they approached, the air grew noticeably thicker, almost syrupy, and sounds seemed to echo strangely, arriving moments after they should. The dimensional boundaries are already affecting our perception, Robin noted, her scholarly interest evident despite the unsettling conditions. They found a narrow beach of black sand to land on. The moment they stepped ashore, Naruto felt a jarring sensation, as if his body momentarily existed in two places at once. Judging by the others' expressions, they experienced something similar. That was weird, Luffy commented, shaking himself like a dog. Felt like I was being stretched, but not by me. Nami consulted her log pose, which was now spinning wildly. The magnetic field is completely chaotic here. Standard navigation will be useless. Then we follow the tower, Zoro suggested, pointing to the black monolith that loomed above them. For once, your directional instinct is correct, Nami remarked dryly. They made their way inland, following a path that seemed unnaturally clear compared to the surrounding terrain. Strange rock formations flanked them on both sides. Not natural outcroppings but ruins of what had once been massive buildings. Some sections appeared solid, while others seemed partially transparent, flickering in and out of existence like poor television reception. It's as if parts of this island exist in different times or dimensions simultaneously, Robin observed, examining a pillar that transitioned from ancient stone to gleaming metal and back again before her eyes. Just like those rifts we've been seeing, Naruto agreed. Only here. It's affecting the entire landscape. As they continued, Naruto noticed something odd about their surroundings. Sometimes, when he turned quickly, he glimpsed what appeared to be people, errant figures going about daily activities in what must have been the island's heyday. When he focused directly on these apparitions, they vanished. You see them too? Robin asked quietly, noting his expression. Naruto nodded. Echoes from another time, or parallel versions of this island in different dimensions, she suggested. The boundaries aren't just thin here, they're practically non-existent. Hey, Luffy called from ahead, there's a city up here. They crested a hill to find a sprawling ruin spread before them. Unlike the flickering ruins they'd passed, these structures appeared solid, massive stone buildings arranged in concentric circles around the central tower, which now loomed impossibly tall above them. Carthage, Robin breathed, her eyes wide with scholarly excitement. Quote, the lost city that vanished from history. It didn't vanish, Naruto realized. It shifted partially into another dimension. They descended into the ancient streets, where silence hung heavy despite the occasional ghostly figure that flitted through their peripheral vision. The architecture was unlike anything Naruto had seen in either world, buildings designed with impossible angles and doorways that seemed to lead nowhere. As they approached the central plaza surrounding the tower, Naruto felt a familiar energy signature that sent a chill down his spine. He's here, Kurama growled. The one called Terachi. That's impossible, Naruto muttered. We sealed him. In this place of weakened boundaries, few things are truly impossible, the fox replied grimly. Naruto turned to the others. We're not alone. Terachi, the dimensional entity we fought on Altares, I can sense him nearby. Robin's expression tightened. How? The ancient sealing chamber should have contained him. Unless he never fully materialized in our dimension to begin with, Naruto suggested, recalling how Terachi had seemed to exist partially in multiple planes. What we sealed might have been just one aspect of his being. Luffy, characteristically unconcerned, punched one fist into his palm. So we beat him again. No problem. It's not that simple, Naruto cautioned. Last time, we had the ancient sealing chamber to contain him. Here, we'd need another solution. They reached the base of the tower, which up close was even more impressive and unnerving. The black stone wasn't actually black, Naruto realized, but rather a material that seemed to absorb light. Symbols reminiscent of those on altares covered its surface, spiraling upward as far as the eye could see. At its base was a massive doorway, twice Naruto's height, standing open in silent invitation. "That's convenient," Zoro remarked suspiciously, hands resting on his sword hilts. "Too convenient," Nami agreed. Robin approached the doorway, examining the inscriptions around it. "These are the same symbols from altares, but arranged differently. This isn't just a doorway to the tower, it's a doorway between dimensions." "A permanent rift," Naruto concluded. Or at least, a controlled one. Luffy, predictably, had already bounded through the entrance without waiting for their analysis. "Come on," his voice echoed back. "It's amazing in here." The others exchanged glances of shared resignation before following their impulsive captain. Inside, the tower opened into a vast circular chamber whose ceiling vanished into darkness above. The walls were lined with the same light-absorbing material, making the space feel infinite. At the center stood a raised platform similar to the Nexus on altares, but far larger and more elaborate. Concentric rings of symbols surrounded a central pedestal on which rested a spherical object about the size of a human head. "The Carthaginian orb," Robin whispered, her composed demeanor giving way to scholarly awe. "It's real. Historians have debated its existence for centuries." The orb appeared to be made of the same material as the tower, but unlike the walls, it emitted a faint LSING light that cycled through colors not quite definable by human perception. "What does it do?" Nami asked, keeping a safe distance. "According to legend, it allows controlled travel between dimensions," Robin explained. "The Carthaginians used it to explore other worlds, eventually establishing colonies across multiple realities." "Then it might be my ticket home," Naruto observed, studying the device with newfound interest. "Our thoughts exactly," came a familiar voice from the shadows. Captain Varen stepped into the light, his sea prism gauntlet once again glowing with malevolent energy. Behind him came a dozen marines, but not the mindless puppets from before. These men moved with purpose, their eyes clear and determined. "Captain Varen," Robin acknowledged coolly. "I thought you had reconsidered your path." "I reconsidered my methods, not my goal," Varen replied. "Lord Terachi opened my eyes to possibilities beyond our world. His approach was flawed, too destructive, too chaotic. But the knowledge he provided remains valuable." "Where is he?" Naruto demanded, sensing Terachi's energy but unable to pinpoint its source. Varen gestured to the orb. "Everywhere and nowhere. When your sealing technique disrupted his physical form, his consciousness dispersed across the dimensional boundaries. But here, where those boundaries are thinnest, he can still communicate." As if on cue, the orb's pulsing intensified, and Terachi's voice emanated from it, not spoken aloud but somehow transmitted directly into their minds. "The Hokage and the scholar return, as predicted, the voice resonated. "The cycle continues toward its inevitable conclusion." "What cycle?" Naruto asked sharply. "What conclusion?" "The convergence of worlds, Terachi replied. "What I attempted to accelerate. Nature will accomplish more gradually. The barriers weaken with each passing day. Eventually, all dimensions will merge. And that's what you want." Robin pressed. "Universal homogenization. What I want is irrelevant. It is the natural evolution of the multiverse, separate realities seeking equilibrium." Luffy, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly stepped forward. "I don't care about multi-whatevers. If worlds merging means people get hurt, then we'll stop it." Varen smiled thinly. "Your determination is admirable, Straw Hat, but misguided. The merger isn't inherently destructive, not if managed properly. That's why we're here, to manage the convergence," Naruto concluded, understanding dawning. "Not to prevent it." "Precisely," Varen confirmed. "Lord Terachi's method was too aggressive. Forcing an immediate merger would have caused catastrophic damage to both worlds. But a controlled, gradual process." He gestured to the Marines behind him. "That's why these men joined me willingly. They understand the potential benefits of connecting worlds." "Benefits for whom?" Robin challenged. "Those in power who control the crossings." Varen's expression hardened. "For everyone willing to embrace progress. Imagine it. Devil fruit abilities enhanced by chakra techniques. Medical advances from your world applied to ours. The possibilities are endless. So are the risks, Naruto countered. My world has seen what happens when power is pursued without restraint. It leads to suffering. A risk worth taking, Varen insisted. And one we're prepared to manage. He turned to his men. Secure the perimeter. No one approaches the orb without authorization. The Marines moved to encircle the platform, weapons ready but not yet aimed at the Straw Hats and Naruto. You seek passage home, Uzumaki Naruto, asterisk, Terechi's voice resonated from the orb. The orb can provide it, a stable path back to Konoha. All I ask in exchange is that you leave us to our work here. The offer was tempting, a guaranteed way home versus an uncertain battle against what might be an inevitable natural process. Naruto glanced at Robin, whose expression remained carefully neutral, though something vulnerable flickered in her eyes. And if I refuse? Naruto asked, already knowing the answer. Then you may still attempt to use the orb, but without guidance. The multiverse is vast. You might find yourself in any of 1,000 dimensions, none of them your own. Luffy stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. Or we could just beat up these guys and figure it out ourselves. Varen sighed. Always violence with your type. Very well. He raised his gauntlet, which now pulsed with even greater intensity than before. We'll do this the hard way. The Marines raised their weapons. But Zoro had already drawn his swords, and Nami had assembled her Kleem attack. Robin crossed her arms in preparation for her devil fruit ability. Wait, Naruto said, raising a hand. Before we fight, I want to understand something. He looked directly at the orb, addressing Terechi. You said the convergence is inevitable. If that's true, why do you need this tower? Why manipulate people across dimensions? The orb pulsed silently for a moment before Terechi responded. The convergence will happen naturally, yes, but over millennia, not decades. I seek to guide it, to ensure the resulting merged reality follows an optimal pattern. With you at its center, Robin deduced. As its god, as its architect, asterisk, Terechi corrected. Someone must determine which aspects of each world survive the merger. And you've appointed yourself to that role, Naruto said flatly. Just as the Otsutsuki appointed themselves the harvesters of chakra across dimensions. The comparison clearly struck a nerve. The orb flared brightly, and Terechi's mental voice took on a sharper edge. I am nothing like those parasites. They consume and discard. I create and preserve. Naruto exchanged a glance with Robin, seeing his own realization mirrored in her eyes. Despite his claims of transcendence, Terechi retained very human emotions, including pride and anger. You know the Otsutsuki, Naruto pressed. You've encountered them before. A pulse of what could only be described as hatred emanated from the orb. They destroyed my original world, consumed its energy, left it a barren husk. I alone survived by slipping between dimensional boundaries as they collapsed. For centuries I drifted between realities until I found worlds worth saving, worth combining to create something stronger, so nothing the Otsutsuki could never devour. The revelation shifted Naruto's understanding of their adversary. Terechi wasn't simply power-hungry, he was driven by a desperate desire to prevent what had happened to his world from recurring. So your goal is to create a reality strong enough to resist the Otsutsuki, Naruto concluded. At any cost, asterisk, Terechi confirmed. Individual lives are meaningless compared to the survival of entire dimensions. Robin stepped forward, but forcing the merger doesn't strengthen these worlds, it destabilizes them. The ancient Carthaginians discovered this, didn't they? That's why they vanished. The orb's pulsing faltered momentarily, confirming her deduction. They tried what you're attempting, Robin continued, her archaeologist's mind piecing together the historical puzzle. They used the orb to accelerate dimensional convergence, but couldn't control the process. Instead of merging worlds, they fractured their own, scattering it across multiple dimensions. They were primitive, Terechi dismissed. Their understanding was incomplete. I have spent centuries perfecting the method. Yet your first attempt on Altaris failed just as theirs did, Robin countered. The energy became unstable, requiring the emergency containment system. Varen, who had been listening to this exchange with growing unease, finally intervened. Enough talk. Lord Terechi has shared his wisdom with me, shown me the correct approach. He turned to his marines. Secure the intruders. We proceed with the calibration as planned. As the marines advanced, Luffy's patience finally snapped. I'm bored with all this dimension talk. If you want to mess with worlds and hurt people, we're stopping you. His arm stretched back impossibly far. Gum pistol. He powerful blow caught one marine squarely in the chest, sending him flying across the chamber. The action broke the tension like a dam bursting, and battle erupted throughout the tower. Zoro engaged 3 marines simultaneously, his 3-sword style creating a whirlwind of deadly precision. Nami used her weather techniques to create localized thunderclouds, shocking groups of opponents with lightning strikes. Luffy bounced from enemy to enemy, his rubber body absorbing bullets and delivering devastating punches. Robin faced off against marines attempting to circle behind them, her multiple arms sprouting to trip, disarm, and incapacitate with efficient grace. She moved with the confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime turning the tide of uneven battles. Naruto found himself confronting Varen directly, the captain's gauntlet now emitting energy that closely mimicked chakra. I don't want to hurt you, Naruto stated, blocking a strike with a kunai. Your intentions might be good, but your methods are flawed. Save your diplomacy for your cage summit, Varen spat, launching a flurry of enhanced punches. I've seen what's coming. The Otsutsuki, the dimensional collapse. Teraic. High's way is the only chance either world has. They exchange blows at blinding speed, neither gaining a clear advantage. Varen's gauntlet technology had improved since their last encounter, now capable of mimicking advanced chakra techniques. When Naruto created shadow clones, Varen generated energy duplicates to counter them. He's using you, Naruto insisted, dodging an energy blast. Just as he used those marines on Altaris. No, Varen countered, his conviction evident. I'm using his knowledge to save our worlds. There's a difference. As they fought, Naruto became aware of changes within the chamber. The orb's pulsing had intensified, and dimensional rifts began to appear around the platform, small at first, then growing larger. Through them, he glimpsed fragments of different realities, a desert wasteland, an underwater city, a metropolis of towering skyscrapers, and finally, a view of Konoha's Hokage monument. It's beginning, Varen shouted triumphantly. The calibration sequence. The pathways align. Teraichi's voice resonated throughout the chamber. Each rift is a potential bridge, each dimension a piece of the new whole. The fighting paused momentarily as everyone, Straw Hats, Marines, and Naruto, witnessed the proliferation of dimensional windows surrounding them. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a kaleidoscope of realities overlapping and interacting. Robin made her way to Naruto's side, her expression grave. This isn't controlled at all, she observed. The rifts are forming randomly, just like on Altaris. He's losing control of the process. Naruto nodded, sensing the chaotic energy flows. Just like before, but on a larger scale. The chamber began to tremble, stone dust raining from the unseen ceiling. Several marines looked to Varen uncertainly. Lord Teraichi. Varen called to the orb. The tremors weren't part of the projection. Minor fluctuations. Asterisk. Teraichi's voice replied, though even his mental tone carried a hint of strain. The dimensional boundaries resist sudden change. It will stabilize. But the tremors only intensified, and cracks began to appear in the chamber walls. The rifts grew more unstable, edges blurring, and images flickering rapidly between worlds. It's not stabilizing, Robin stated flatly. It's cascading toward critical failure, just like what happened to the Carthaginians. Naruto made his decision. Luffy, he called to the Straw Hat captain. We need to stop this before the tower collapses and takes the island with it. Luffy, who had been staring in fascination at a rift showing what appeared to be a world made entirely of meat, nodded firmly. Right. Smash the orb. No. Robin and Varen shouted simultaneously. Destroying the orb while the rifts are active could shatter all dimensional boundaries in the vicinity. Robin explained quickly. We need to deactivate it properly. Varen, surprisingly, nodded in agreement. The calibration sequence must be reversed. He looked at the increasingly unstable rifts. Then back to his men, some of whom were now visibly frightened. Something shifted in his expression, doubt replacing zealotry. Proceed with the merger. Teraichi commanded. Minor disruptions are expected. Minor. Nami exclaimed as a section of wall disappeared entirely, revealing the void between dimensions. The entire tower is coming apart. Several Marines broke ranks, fleeing toward the exit. Others looked to Varen, awaiting orders. The captain stood frozen, conflict evident in his expression. "Captain Varen," Naruto said firmly, "you know this is wrong. Whatever Terachi showed you, whatever he promised, it's not worth the destruction of both our worlds." Varen's gaze shifted between the orb, his men, and the increasingly dangerous rifts. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "How do we stop it?" he asked Robin. "Traitor," Terachi's voice boomed. "After everything I showed you." The orb pulsed violently, and Varen screamed, clutching his head. His gauntlet flared with uncontrolled energy, shooting wild blasts around the chamber. One struck near Nami, who was saved only by Zoro's quick intervention. "He's trying to maintain control through Varen," Robin realized. "We need to disrupt the connection." Naruto nodded, forming a specialized Rasengan designed to disrupt chakra flow. "Hold him still," he called to Robin. She immediately crossed her arms. Diaz Fleur. 10 arms sprouted from Varen's body, restraining him despite his struggles. Naruto charged forward, driving the modified Rasengan not into Varen himself but into the gauntlet. The corrupted chakra technology overloaded spectacularly, the gauntlet shattering into fragments. Varen collapsed to his knees, gasping but free from Terachi's direct influence. "The orb," he panted, pointing with his now bare hand. The reversal sequence, 5 points, counterclockwise activation. Robin rushed to the platform, examining the controls around the orb's pedestal. "Here," she called, indicating 5 indentations arranged in a familiar pattern. "It's the same as the nexus points on Altares," Naruto observed, joining her. "A common design across ancient dimensional technology," Robin confirmed. "But what activates them? You will not interfere," Terachi raged. The orb's pulsing became erratic, and the rifts around them began to spin wildly, images blurring together. Varen staggered to his feet, supported by 2 of his loyal Marines. "Blood," he said weakly. "The ancients used blood to activate the controls." "Of course," Robin murmured. "Life energy is the activati. Agent. It's consistent with other ancient technologies." The tower shook violently, nearly throwing them from their feet. A massive rift opened directly above the orb, showing what appeared to be poo. "Void. The nothingness between dimensions. Whatever we're doing, we need to do it now," Zoro shouted over the growing cacophony of collapsing stone and dimensional energy. Naruto didn't hesitate. Drawing a kunai, he sliced his palm and pressed it to the first indentation. The control point glowed gold with his chakra-infused blood. "1 down, 4 to go," he said, moving to the next point. Robin followed his example, cutting her own palm and pressing it to another indentation. It glowed with a different energy, the power of her world rather than chakra. "We need 3 more, she called. Luffy bounded forward without hesitation. "Me next." He bit his own thumb hard enough to draw blood and slammed it onto the 3rd point, which glowed with rubbery elasticity. Varen limped to the 4th point, his expression resolute. "For both our worlds," he said quietly, pressing his bloodied hand to the indentation. "1 more," Naruto urged as the chamber continued to disintegrate around them. Nami stepped forward, using one of her Klima-tacked blades to slice her palm before pressing it to the final point. "This better work," she muttered. With all 5 points activated, the platform began to hum with increasing intensity. The orb's chaotic pulsing gradually stabilized, falling into a steady rhythm. "No," Terachi's voice raged. "Centuries of planning. You cannot undo everything." "We're not undoing the natural convergence," Robin replied calmly. "We're preventing an unnatural acceleration that would destroy both worlds." The rifts around the chamber began to shrink, closing one by one. The trembling of the tower gradually subsided. But as the dimensional distortions receded, one rift remained, the one showing Konoha. Unlike the others, it grew more stable, its edges crystallizing into a defined doorway. "So be it." Terachi's voice had lost its rage, now cold with calculation. "The slow path then. It changes nothing in the end. The worlds will merge eventually. And when that time comes naturally, both worlds will be ready," Naruto countered. "Not forced together unprepared." The orb's pulsing slowed to a gentle rhythm, and Terechi's presence faded, though Naruto sensed he wasn't truly gone, merely retreating to the spaces between dimensions. Varen looked to the remaining rift, then to Naruto. "That's your way home," he said. "The reversal sequence stabilized a direct path to your point of origin." Naruto studied the rift, which indeed showed a clear view of the forest outside Konoha where he had first disappeared. Through it, he could even see Anbu operatives patrolling, presumably still searching for their missing Hokage. "How long will it remain stable?" he asked Robin. "Not long," she replied, examining the platform controls. "The tower is badly damaged from the energy fluctuations. This might be your only chance." Luffy bounced forward, grinning despite the seriousness of the situation. "So you're going home. That's great." He stuck out his hand. "It was fun having you in our crew. Even if it was just for a little while." Naruto shook the rubber man's hand, smiling despite the sudden tightness in his chest. "Thank you, Captain Luffy. Your help has been invaluable." The others gathered around to say their goodbyes. Zoro offered a respectful nod, warrior to warrior. Nami extracted a promise that he wouldn't forget them. Even the Marines, following Varen's lead, stood at respectful attention for the departing Hokage. Finally, Naruto turned to Robin, who stood slightly apart, her expression composed but her eyes revealing deeper emotions. "I guess this is goodbye," he said quietly. Robin nodded, her scholar's facade momentarily giving way to something more vulnerable. "It appears so." 1,000 words hung unspoken between them, Aknal. Meant of a connection that had formed quickly but deeply. Two souls who had known similar pain, similar struggles, and had recognized in each other a kindred spirit. "Robin," Naruto began, not Entir. Really sure what he wanted to say but knowing he couldn't leave without saying something. She silenced him with a gentle shake of her head. "We both have our worlds, Naruto. Our responsibilities, our families." "Yes," he acknowledged, "but what we experienced will remain with us both," she finished for him, a soft smile touching her lips. "Some connections transcend dimensional boundaries, don't they?" Before he could respond, the tower shuddered again, and the rift flickered momentarily. "You need to go," Robin urged. "Before the pathway collapses." Naruto glanced at the rift, then back to Robin. Making a sudden decision, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a specialized kunai, one of his father's 3-pronged kunai used for the Flying Thunder God technique. "Take this," he said, pressing it into her hand. "It's more than a weapon, it's a beacon. In my world, I can sense these across vast distances." Robin examined the unusual kunai with interest. "And across dimensions, I don't know," Naruto admitted. "But if the boundaries between worlds continue to thin as Terechi claimed, perhaps one day." She closed her fingers around the kunai, understanding its significance. "Then I'll keep it close." Another violent tremor shook the tower, and chunks of ceiling began to fall around them. "We need to evacuate," Varen shouted to his men. "The tower is collapsing." Luffy stretched his arms, grabbing several Marines who had been trapped by falling debris. "Everybody out. This place is coming down." Naruto looked at the rift, which was now visibly shrinking despite the stabilization effort. It was now or never. "Go," Robin urged. "We'll be fine." With a final nod to the archaeologist who had become so important to him in such a short time, Naruto turned and leapt through the dimensional doorway. The sensation was different from his uncontrolled arrival, more like stepping through a waterfall than being violently pulled through space. He emerged in the familiar forests surrounding Konoha, the smell of pine and cedar replacing the alien scents of the Grand Line. Behind him, the rift shimmered once more before closing completely, leaving no trace of the other world or the remarkable people he'd met there. The Anbu patrol spotted him immediately, their masked faces turning in unison. "Lord Seventh," the squad leader exclaimed, rushing forward. "You've returned." Naruto nodded, his eyes still fixed on the spot where the rift had been. "Yes," he said quietly. "I've returned." Within hours, he was back in Konoha, surrounded by relieved counselors, worried friends, and his overjoyed family. Hinata embraced him tightly, tears in her eyes, while Boruto tried to maintain a cool facade despite his obvious relief, and Himawari simply refused to let go of his hand. His shadow clone had maintained his duties admirably, though it had been clearly approaching its limit after so many days. The village had functioned, treaties had been maintained, and no disasters had occurred in his absence. Yet as he sat in his office that evening, after the celebrations and debriefings, after the family dinner where he'd carefully edited his interdimensional adventure into something less alarming for his children, Naruto found his thoughts returning to the crew of the Thousand Sunny, and particularly to a raven-haired archaeologist with knowing eyes and a quiet strength born of survival. "You miss them already," Kurama observed within his mind. "Is it that obvious?" Naruto replied silently. "To me, yes. We experienced something few from our world ever have, a glimpse of an entirely different reality. Such experiences change a person." Naruto nodded, gazing out the window at the starlit village. "I should focus on documenting everything we learned. The dimensional rifts, Terachi's warnings about the Otsutsuki, the natural convergence process, it could be vital information for future generations. And the personal aspects." Kurama prodded gently. A small smile touched Naruto's lips. "Some connections transcend dimensional boundaries," he murmured, echoing Robin's words. "I believe that." 1 month later, life in Konoha had returned to normal, or as normal as life ever got for the 7th Hokage. The dimensional rift incident had been classified as top secret, shared only with the other Kage and a select few researchers studying dimensional chakra theory. Naruto had thrown himself back into his duties with renewed vigor, appreciating his village and family with the perspective that only temporary separation can bring. Yet occasionally, he would find himself gazing at the horizon, wondering about the crew sailing the Grand Line in another reality. On this particular evening, he was working late in his office, reviewing proposals for the upcoming Chunin exams. The familiar routine was interrupted by a sudden, sharp sensation, a pulse of energy that he hadn't felt since returning to Konoha. Naruto froze, pen hovering above paper. The sensation was unmistakable, the resonance of one of his father's specialized kunai being activated. But that was impossible. All such kunai were accounted for, stored securely or carried by his personal guard. All except one. The pulse came again, stronger this time. It didn't feel close, not within the village or even the land of fire, but it was definitely real. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on the sensation, attempting to triangulate its source. Instead of a physical location, his mind filled with an image, the deck of the Thousand Sunny under a full moon. Robin stood at the railing, holding the three-pronged kunai in her hands. Eyes closed in concentration. Behind her, Luffy and the others watched with curious expressions. The image was so vivid that Naruto gasped, opening his eyes to find himself still in his office. But the connection remained, a tenuous thread between dimensions that should have been impossible. "The boundaries continue to thin, ****, Kurama observed with wonder. "Terachi was right about that much. Can we respond?" Naruto asked, already knowing what he wanted to try. "I don't know, ***, the fox admitted. "The Flying Thunder God was designed for physical teleportation within our dimension, not communication across realities." Naruto stood, moving to the center of his office where there was open space. "Let's find out." He formed the hand signs for a modified version of his father's technique, not attempting to teleport himself, which would be dangerous without knowing if complete passage was possible, but sending a fraction of his chakra along the established connection. Golden energy gathered around him as he focused on the image of the Thousand Sunny, on Robin holding the kunai. "Flying Thunder God. Chakra projection," he murmured, releasing the technique. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the office around him seemed to fade, replaced by the deck of the Straw Hat's ship. It wasn't physical transportation. He could still feel his bow die standing in Konoha, but a projection of his consciousness, carried along the thread established by the kunai. Robin gasped as a translucent, golden version of Naruto appeared before her. The rest of the crew reacted with various exclamations of surprise and excitement. "It worked," Naruto said, his voice sounding distant even to his own ears. "I can see you, Naruto," Robin replied, her usual composure briefly giving way to wonder. "We weren't sure if it would work. The kunai began glowing during a dimensional anomaly we were investigating. Another convergence point," Naruto guessed. "The boundaries are continuing to thin." Just as Terachi predicted, Luffy bounded forward, attempting to poke Naruto's projected form. His finger passed through the golden image. "So cool. Are you a ghost now?" Naruto chuckled. Not quite. This is a chakra projection. My consciousness temporarily extended across the dimensional boundary. I'm still physically in Konoha. How long can you maintain this connection? Robin asked, the scholar in her immediately considering the practical aspects. Not long, Naruto admitted, already feeling the strain. And it might not be possible at all once you leave this convergence point. Then we'll make the most of it, she said with a small smile. For the next few minutes, Naruto exchanged rapid updates with the Straw Hats. They had continued their adventures, dealing with rival pirates and marine pursuers while Robin researched more about dimensional convergence. The orb from Carthage Tower had been secured before the structure collapsed entirely, currently being studied by Frankie for insights into cross-dimensional technology. And Terachi? Naruto asked. No direct manifestation, Robin reported. But we've encountered phenomena that suggest High's consciousness remains active in the spaces between dimensions. Same in my world, Naruto confirmed. Brief energy signatures at sites of dimensional thinning, but no physical presence. The projection began to flicker as Naruto's chakra reserve strained to maintain the cross-dimensional connection. You're fading, Robin observed, a hint of regret in her voice. The technique is reaching its limit, Naruto confirmed. But now that we know it's possible, Robin nodded in understanding. We'll continue researching convergence points. Perhaps with refinement, more stable communication could be established. Or even visitation, Naruto suggested. If the natural convergence continues as predicted, travel between our worlds might become more viable over time. The projection flickered more severely. Naruto had perhaps seconds left before the connection broke. Until next time, then, Robin said softly, holding the kunai a little tighter. Until next time, Naruto agreed, looking arrow-ooned at the Straw Hats who had welcomed him so readily into their strange and wonderful world. Take care of each other. Always do. Luffy grinned. Don't forget us, ninja guy. As if I could, Naruto replied with a smile as his projection faded entirely. He returned fully to his office in Konoha, physically exhausted but spiritually energized. The connection had been brief but real, proof that dimensional boundaries were indeed permeable, and that bonds formed across realities could endure. In the months and years that followed, such connections would occur again, brief windows of communication during periods of dimensional convergence. Sometimes it would be Robin alone with the kunai. Other times, the entire Straw Hat crew would gather to exchange news and stories. Naruto shared these experiences with only his closest confidants, Hinata, Shikamaru, Sasuke. They understood the importance of maintaining secrecy while acknowledging the potential significance of dimensional communication for the future. As for Terachi's predictions about eventual convergence, they remained an open question. Research teams in both worlds monitored dimensional stability, prepared for either outcome. If convergence was truly inevitable, they would face it with the combined knowledge of two worlds rather than the manipulated catastrophe Terachi had planned. And if Robin sometimes appeared in Naruto's dreams, or if he occasionally found himself gazing at the stars and wondering which ones might shine on the thousand sunny, that was his own private connection to a world that had changed him in ways he was still discovering. Some bonds, after all, transcend dimensional boundaries. Some connections, once formed, can never truly be broken, regardless of the worlds that separate them. Chapter 3 End.